Okay, so again today we're going to discuss about hypertext markup language or HTML. So we've been thinking about hypertext markup language already for the past couple of discussions. So we all know that that is the language of the web. That's the only way. That's the only thing that our browsers can, at least part of the script or client-side scripting languages that our browsers can only read. That means HTML is the basis of all language of the web. So every programming language or scripting languages must be translated first into HTML so that we can see it on our screen. So if you have any questions or clarifications regarding today's lesson, kindly kindly raise your hand using Google Meet, or you can also send it directly here in the messages. Okay? If you have any questions or clarifications. So today's topic will include coding, obviously. So this is the start of our coding phase of the class. So this would be the time that you'll be using those applications that I ask you to install on your phone or on your desktop or on your laptop computers. So just to review, we've discussed the web development lifecycle in our previous lesson. Are you done with the assignments, by the way? Muna mo?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's good. So I'm expecting everybody's already done. And then, were you able to simulate web development lifecycle thoroughly? So although kutobrata sa designing or sa planning rather, but at least once we get to the coding part, which is starting today, you'll be able to continue with your web development lifecycle from designing up until the maintenance. So we don't necessarily have to go through maintenance, but at least we can go through coding. Alright, so here's a replay of that class. Just click on it where you just copy this link, or you can just go to the YouTube channel that I told you. Alright, today we'll talk about HTML or the Hypertext Markup Language. Particularly, we'll be talking about HTML5, that's the latest version of HTML. We're going to discuss a few of the HTML tags. There are hundreds of HTML tags, but we cannot go through each one of them one by one. It will take maybe days for us to learn all of the HTML tags. So I'm just going to give you the most used, pinakagamit na HTML tags, and then it would be up to you to learn about the rest. And you should learn about the rest of the HTML tags so you can build your own website. And then HTML attributes. So what are the different properties of each HTML tags? Properties are called attributes. We'll talk more about it later on. Alright, so let's start. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Hypertext Markup Language is the standard markup language for documents designed to be displayed in a web browser. It can be assisted by technologies such as cascading style sheets or CSS and scripting languages such as JavaScript. Alright, so these three, Hypertext Markup Language, cascading style sheets, and JavaScript are the three client-side scripting languages. When we say client-side, okay, let me write it down. Oops, let me plug it in. Okay. Alright, so when we say client-side, oh, I haven't written it, so what do you mean by client-side? Or client-side scripting scripts, client-side scripts. What do you mean by client-side scripts? Anybody have an idea? Can say an idea. What do you mean by client-side? So we have server-side and we also have client-side scripts. And HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are all client-side scripts. What do you mean by client-side scripts? I think I have mentioned it in our previous meeting. Anyone has an idea? Ortega, go ahead.
It is the scripting languages that the client side can understand, sir.
Okay, that's correct. Alright, so from the term suggests client side. So this is not a scripting language that will be run on the server, but on the client, which is our browser. So these three are the things or the scripts or scripting languages that our browser can read. That's why it's called client side, because it can be run on the client, which is browsers, mobile apps, something like that. So these three, hypertext markup language, cascading style sheets, and JavaScript, are client-side scripting languages. But the markup language is going to be the HTML or hypertext markup language, and it can be supported using cascading style sheets and JavaScript. Now, let's break the word markup. What do you mean by markup? Okay, ibutan na din ako ang definition. So markup language refers to system of annotating a document in a way that it is syntactically distinguishable from the text. So yun, dapat syntactically undistinguishable from the text, meaning when the document is processed for display, the markup language is not shown and is only used to format text. So sa iyo akong definition, dapat that is syntactically undistinguishable. We say, di ba kung mention tawag distinguishable, meaning like similar, di ba? Is that the right definition? Like similar or kanang recognizable? Is that true? Is that the right definition? When we say distinguishable, we say distinguished guest, meaning recognized guest. Alright, so syntactically undistinguishable. What do I mean by that? So whatever it is that we write on our screen, we'll just translate it into graphics. So kung unsa ato ang atong gisulat or unsa atong gibutang sa atong screen will not be necessarily the same thing that the browser will render. I guess na yung idea. Unlike Photoshop, kung unsa ato ang gi-design sa atong Photoshop, unsa atong i-add sa atong Photoshop, whatever it is that we will see, whatever it is that we will add, whatever it is that we will design, if we print it, meaning kung i-render na to siya, or if we print it, or if we upload it, it's going to be the same thing. Is that true? Kung unsa atong gibutang sa Photoshop, maupod ang iyang output, ang iyang output. However, in HTML, notice that we will use codes. We will use codes to enter, to build the website, but the output is going to be code ba ang iyang i-output? Dili. Diba? We will use code like HTML when we input it on our text editors and our IDEs. But when we run it, kung ato siyang i-run or ato siyang i-output, is it going to be the same? Code ra ba gyapon ang magawas?
Dili, sir.
Okay, dili na. Alright?
No, sir.
So that's what they mean by markup language. So that means it's a list of commands that will control how the output is going to look like. Unlike Photoshop, like I said, ang Photoshop kung sa imong gibutang sa imong sa application, if we're going to save it or export it, it's going to be the same thing. Similar ang ilahang output, ang imong gi-input o ang imong output. However, for markup languages, both the input and the output are totally different. So for markup language, for HTML, for example, we're going to use codes to control how the website is going to look like. But if we will output it or if we were going to run it, it's not going to be codes that you will see, but the actual graphics. So that's what they mean by a markup. Web browsers receive HTML documents from a web server or from local storage, and render the documents into multimedia web pages. Alright, so again, going back to our previous topic about how the web works, our browsers will receive HTML documents coming from the web server. Now we can also just save it in our computers, and if we'll run it, it's going to process or it's going to perform the same way. So web HTML documents and render the documents into multimedia web pages. So we do mean by multimedia, so every type of media. Okay, it could be either text, graphics, videos, numbers, audios, etc. It can be rendered on the screen. What is HTML5? HTML5 is the fifth and currently the last major HTML version, first released in the public-facing form on January 22nd, 2008, and received as Worldwide Web Consortium or W3C recommendation status on October 2014. Its goals were to improve the language with support of the latest multimedia and other features. Alright, so the HTML5 was released 2008 pa lang, on January 22nd, and ever since we didn't receive any major upgrade or update or major version of HTML, so just the HTML5. So HTML started, well, HTML only, and then we have the HTML2, HTML3, and ever since 2008, we're currently using HTML5. It received the World Wide Web or W3C recommendation status on October 2014. And HTML5 is known, compared to the other HTML versions, it is known to improve the language with support of latest multimedia and new features. So since there are new formats for multimedia, like sa una, if I can remember it well, if we will watch movies, most of the format is AVI. Kabantay mo anang format sa video nga AVI? O na mo kabutan? Let's say for example, Tor.avi. Usually, mo ni always nga mga formats sa mga salida sa una. So, and then MP4 or MP4 kuan, nahimo siyang standard, and then naapoy mo. Alright, so all of the other formats, these are just example of formats. So, all of the other formats that nahimong standard has been supported by HTML5. So before, dili nimo ma-play ang mga videos like this, but right now we can play like that. So what is an HTML5 document? HTML uses different keywords to define a function called HTML tags. Alright, how do we display elements to our web browser? In our web browser, we will use HTML tags. HTML tags are keywords that define a function. HTML tags are declared with open and close angle brackets for opening, and open and close angle brackets with / for closing. For example, if we will declare HTML, declaring the start of the HTML file. Alright, so if we're going to declare HTML as our first function, it must be enclosed with the open and close angle brackets, and if we're going to close it, it's going to be the same, but we will add / Alright, so if we're going to compare it with, let's say, C++, okay, so kung C++, if we're going to declare, so again, ito pag-declare of function, or not function, but any other, yeah, let's just say function. How do we declare function on C++? Kung saan ito pag-close. Alright, let's say for example, okay, wala di ay opening and closing as C++. It's PHP. Have you tried PHP already? Naka-experience ba mo, ana? Wala pa? Alright.
Wala, sir.
Okay, for PHP, we will start with this open angle bracket, and then question mark, and then PHP. Oh, sorry. Wala pa di. Anyway, we'll get to this in our future lesson. C++ doesn't have any open and closing declarations. Oops. PHP. So that's the start, and then end with I'm not sure, but something like that. Okay. All right. Anyway, for HTML, if we're going to start an HTML tag, we will enclose the actual tag with two angle brackets, open and close, and then for the closing tag, we will use open and close angle bracket with / Katipunan, do you have any question?
No, sir. Sorry.
It's okay, no problem. Alright, so this is an example of an HTML5 document, and this is the pinaka-basic way in starting to create an HTML file. Alright, so first is we're going to declare this angle bracket, and then what they call this exclamation point doc type HTML. This means that we will be using HTML5 version. Alright, so that means we're going to let the browser know that we will be using an HTML5 version. Okay, and then we will start with HTML. And remember, if we're going to start an HTML tag, okay, if we're going to start an HTML tag, we will always close it. So we have here the start of HTML and we have here the end. Start and end. And notice that the end is going to be the same, however, na siya /. Always remember to add / if you're going to close an HTML tag. Now, again, this is the basic structure of any HTML document. So first is we'll declare which HTML version, and since HTML5 is the latest one, so we will always use HTML5. That means we will always use this declaration every time that we're going to create a website or a web page rather. So we will start with HTML, right? And then inside HTML we will have head. And notice that we start the head and then we close the head as well. And of course, if not the head, nakitay body, right? So we have body, that's opening and then closing body. So what unsay nasulod sa head? This contains the metadata or the preliminary data, or let's say additional information about the web page. All right, we can either add the title of the page, we can add the CSS files, JavaScript files, so on and so forth. And then we have the body. Everything that is inside the body tag are the ones that we're going to view on the screen. Kung katong atong ibutang sa atong screen when we render it, dili nato ibutang tanan inside the body. This contains the tags, elements, and scripts to design the web page. All right, again, let's review. First, okay, let's illustrate it. So if this is the HTML, all right. So if this is the HTML, inside the HTML would be head and body. All right. So this is just to illustrate og asa nato ibutang ang head and body. So first is we'll write HTML. As you can see, ang head ug ang body is enclosed siya sa HTML. Just like this illustration right here. So both head and body are enclosed with HTML. So be careful in declaring these elements. Okay? Make sure nga ang imuhang pag-open and pag-close are always gonna be kanang in relation to its function. So since ang HTML siya may pinakauna nga buhaton nato, then siya pud ang pinakalas na i-add. Just like this. So siya yung pinakauna, HTML, siya pud ang pinakalas. That means everything would be inside HTML just like this box. Alright? And then we have head and body. Alright? But anyway, we'll discuss each of these lines one by one. Let me erase it so di mo maglibog. Let me erase everything. So these are just the pinaka-basic ni siya nga structure of an HTML5 document. So let's discuss each line one by one. Below are the basic structure of any HTML document. The DTD, or the doc type declaration. Every HTML document must be declared with a type. Once declared, the browser will know that the document type is going to be processed. This will allow browsers to adjust the processing mechanism. To use the latest major version of HTML, which is the HTML5, we will use the tag this one. Now, the good thing about HTML is it is not case sensitive. HTML, not case sensitive. What do you mean by case sensitivity, by the way? You can remember. What do you mean by case sensitivity? Ortega, go ahead.
For example, so
Sige, go ahead, Ortega. Let's listen to him and then let's also listen to Hakasan later on. Go ahead.
Dili siya sensitive sir kasi okay lang niya if ang example kanang yang attributes or head kuan naka uppercase or lower case.
All right. And how about you, Kosalim? What do you mean by case sensitivity?
Case sensitivity, sir, is how you write the variables, like the uppercase and the lowercase. So,
Okay.
if, for example, the variable which is num, so if you write it in a big, so the num with with the uppercase, with that start with the lowercase, and the num that starts with the uppercase have different meanings. So
Okay.
that's what it is.
That's true. All right. Thank you both. That's all correct. When you say case sensitivity, it's how you write the from Mr. Kosalem's example variable, or in this case HTML tags. HTML, however, are not case sensitive. Unlike C++, if you can remember C++. So if you have a variable, let's say num, which are all capital letters, it's going to be different with this because C++ is case sensitive, right? However, for HTML, you can write this however you fancy. Okay, so for example, this one would be the proper, but you can also write this like this: doc type, doc type space HTML. All right, you can either write it that way, or you can also pwede i-jejemon gani. All right, doc type HTML. Alright, you can write it however you want because it is not case sensitive. Either way, these three will perform just the same function. Alright, so again, what is the DTD for? Parang sa ganito. Okay, harang madali ta. This is to declare that our browser should be using, that our website or that this web page will be using HTML5 document. So why do you think that it is necessary for us to declare this? Based on the definition, what do you understand about the definition? Why do we need to declare the DTD or doc type declaration? Unsa iyang benefit di ay? Any idea?
Try, sir,
Go ahead, Kosalam.
for the compiler to know, sir, what language you are using in your program.
Okay. All right. So that's true. However, again, by default, that's true. By the way, by default, our browser already know that can already understand HTML. How about Ortega? Do you have any idea? Good.
For me, sir, when you say HTML and HTML5, there are different answer. Example, there are new, uh, there are new attributes or elements that have in HTML5, well, and that is not in HTML, the old HTML. So if you need to declare doc type HTML to understand, to make the browser understand that some of elements are new in
Mm.
the doc type 5 HTML, HTML and not in the HTML, the old one, sir.
Okay. All right. So you both are correct, and I feel like I only have two students. Okay. I encourage everybody to participate, guys. Okay. Again, this is a class. Kumaga college seminars and college seminars or college classes are supposed to be a discussion with all the students. Nana ba? Unlike sa mga classes sa high school or sa elementary nga dapat mo ta, but college are supposed to be college classes are considered to be seminars. That means it's always going to be an open forum. Alright, so try it pan. Ayaw mo kadlok mo, ayaw mo kaulaw share sa inyong thoughts. But yes, both of them are correct. The reason why, but perhaps the main reason why we have to declare doc type is that pinakauna din siya, dapat pag nakauna siya nga line, it's because we are trying to advise the browser, wait, moing tanga, hey browser, get ready because I'm going to drop some HTML5 tags on you. We're gonna ba? So that the browsers can adjust, right, the processing mechanism. So since base lang sulti kanina, HTML5 and the older HTML versions are a little bit different. So at the first glance pa lang, pag una pa lang pag-run sa browser, the browser will already set its mechanism to only perform HTML5 as the highest priority. So, ang pinakauna niyang i-run, yung mechanism should, kasi iyahang rendering engine is for HTML5. That's the highest priority and not the older HTML versions. We're just letting the browser know that we'll be using HTML5 all throughout the web page so that ma-ready siya para ma-ready ang kaugalingon. So that is the first line, and we should always do this. Otherwise, pwede ramang murang raman ang atong program, atong website without this declaration. However, there are some HTML tags that might behave like an older HTML version. So to make sure that HTML tags will always perform like an behave rather. To make sure that all the HTML will behave like the newest version, which is the HTML5, we should always declare this. So this is a standard. That means delete nato ni pwedeng walaon, otherwise our web page or our website may perform like an older version of HTML. Next is the head element. Alright, this one right here. Inside the main container, the head or the main container or the main HTML, that's what it means. The head section will be added. This contains the metadata. When say metadata, the data about the HTML property, HTML document. So it's like properties. That's what you call metadata, the properties or information about the web page. So that includes title, styles, scripts, etc. It will be declared as head, that's the open tag, and then closing tag with /. So again, what unsay ato importante sa head, we can add the title, the styles like the CSS, and script like JavaScript connection or something like that. So it's always inside the HTML here. So dili siya pwede mo gawas sa HTML, it should always be inside the HTML. So as you can see here, if this is the opening HTML, this is the close one. Both the opening and closing for head is inside the HTML. And then to add a page title, add the title tag inside the head section. Then page title. Alright, so inside the head, this is where we can add, diba? As per definition, we can add the title of the web page. So how to write the web page title? So obviously we're just going to write. We're going to use the title tag, which is this, open and close angle bracket, title, and then input the page title, and then close it. So notice that the title is inside the head. Di siya pwedeng malapaw, dili na to pwedeng ibutang ang atong closing title diri sa ubos, because in that case, dili na siya enclosed. So we make sure that it is enclosed with inside the head. So where can we find? So if we're going to add the page title, asa siguro nato siya makita? Anyone? If we're going to run it on the screen, asa nato siya makita?
Per part, sir.
Okay, alright, on the tab, bookmark, on the, so this is the page title. So if we're going to open up the website, any website, so let's say for example, if we're going to, let's say YouTube, then whatever it is that is written at the at the tab here, that is the title of the page. So it's loading really slow. I'm using Globe now, and it's supposed to be faster here in my area, but at least it's no longer as slow as BLDD. Alright, so here, as you can see, I'm not sure if you can see it on your screen, but here, naa siya title nga number 5. That is the number of notification I have in my YouTube account, and then YouTube, that is the actual title. Alright, so obviously once we design our website, we should always add a title, and that way it's going to enhance the user experience. So ban magod, what happens if you're not going to add any title? Most of the time ang mo display is ang imuhang address, ang mo display sa tab. So that's why maybe you have experienced it with some other web pages. You visit, wala siya title like this, but instead ang mo display is ang URL. So that is by default if you're not going to add any title on it. And then the page title will appear at the tab of the web browser. And then the body section or the body element. So again, the body is enclosed with the open and close angle brackets, and it will the body section contains all the elements, tags, and scripts that will be used to display the contents of the HTML document. It will be declared as this. So inside the body, that is where everything that we want to display on our screen should be added to. So for example, this one, if this is our browser screen, or so ito kani browser so ito kani sa components of the website web browser, browser screen. I forgot. But everything that should be inside here should be written inside the body tab. All right. So it's not gonna be inside the head. For example, if kaning YouTube logo kanisha, kaning area, for this to be used, for this to be displayed, it shouldn't be added on the head, or it shouldn't be added before the body, but it should be added inside the body so that we can see it on the screen. All right. So let's try creating this very simple HTML web page using the basic structure. So remember, again, our structure should always start with the document declaration, doc type declaration, and then the HTML tag. So the HTML tag contains the head, and inside the head we can add title or any other metadata, and then right below head we can add the body. The body contains all the necessary elements that we want to display on our screen. Okay. For web developers, I ask you to download and install either Notepad++, Sublime Text, but the proper way to go on how to write code should be using Microsoft Visual Studio. But for now, para sa yun lang and mag-get sa tanan, we will use simple Notepad++. So just for you to get the hang of it, para mas manad mo gamay on how it work, and then once you already experience with writing codes already and how HTML and CSS works in the future, that's the time that I would advise you, especially those who are using computers, to use a proper IDE, which I would suggest we will be using Microsoft Visual Studio Code. All right, but for this discussion, we're just going to use a simple yet good enough Notepad++. Actually, you can use the default Notepad, but right now we're just going to use a simple Notepad++. Okay, so if you will be using Notepad++ or any other text editor, it's very simple to use. Just click File and then New. Before anything else, okay, before we do this, we need to create a folder first, and we will himo na to siya nga mura siya o website ba. So our folder name should be our website. So let me create a folder. All right, and then let's call it my first web page. All right, that is the name of our folder. So in kuan pod mura siya og if we're going to host it, this is gonna be the title of our website. Mura bag kuan ba? Yung title, yung domain name or something like that. So I have here my folder. So I guess that's the proper way in starting to start developing a web page, to always start with a folder. And then next is, now that we open Notepad++, we will create a file. So file and then save as, and then look for the folder. Look for the folder that you created. In my case, it's gonna be right here. Okay, kadali lang palomar ha. Oh, it's HTML, my first web page. Here's my web page, and we're going to input our file name. So what do you think would be our file name for our very first web page? It's an idea. What should be the file name? Okay, Palomar has a question a while ago. Naka question, Palomar?
Excuse me, sir.
Go ahead.
Sa every computer, sir, nana siya C++ Notepad.
So what do you mean by C++? Okay.
Ako lang Notepad nga MB gamit, sir.
Di ba when we start our class during the orientation, I asked you to install Notepad++. Not all computers have one. It's not installed. Wala siya gi-install but built-in. All right, so you have to install it manually on your own. But na Notepad, but not the Notepad++. Although we can use Notepad still. However, dili kayo siya intuitive. Medyo lisod. Nindot ang Notepad++ because na siya color coding. So depending on the type of code that you're using, na siya color coding ba. So maayo ang Notepad++. Alright? Palomar, make sure to install Notepad++.
Okay, sir.
As per minimum, kumbaga, on your computer. Alright, kinsa tong ni-raise sa ilang hand ganina? Alright, I ask you, what should be the title? What should be the file name of our very first web page? What do you think?
Try, sir. Ang first web page .html.
Index.html, that's correct. Okay. Alright, so it should always be index.html. Not necessarily for the first web page, but if ganahan ka nga, it should be written on the page where you want the people to, you want the browser to display first if ilang i-visit ang among website. Diba? Kung i-enter na to, for example, you already hosted your website. What is the very first web page that you want to display when the users visit your website? For example, if we visit taog YouTube, this is the first page that you will see. Not your profile, not your account, not your channel. So this is my channel, but if people will visit www.facebook.com, ang una nilang ma-display is not this, not the channel, but this one, the home page. So if this is the page that you want to display first, whenever people will visit your website, then you should save this particular web page as index.html. Alright? So since we only have one page right now, and pretty much this is what we want to display, we want to save it as index.html. So what? Ano di ay? Unsa din ang as index.html. Alright? So index.html is just the first page that any web browser will run or any web server will run. Pangitaon sa niya ang index.html, and if wala siya makita ang index.html, then it will try to display you all the list of the web pages, which is not really good. But iyang i-display ang list of web pages if wala kay gibutang ang index.html, which is a little bit kuan ba, dili kay siya user friendly. So to make sure that every time that the user will visit your website, it's always going to display at least one page. We will save that page as index.html. Alright, so now that we have the index.html, let's start writing our code. Now, can anyone share kung sa itong pinakauna nga line? Raise your hand. Palomar, go ahead.
Doc type, sir.
Okay, can you tell me what to enter? Saan na enter? Alright, it's okay, Palomar. Thank you. Medyo madugay na pag inaniyo nato. So it's okay. So long as we said doc type declaration, so we will write open and close angle brackets, and then exclamation point, and then doc type, and then HTML. What do you mean by this again? Para unsa gayta ni siya? Anyone?
To inform the web browser, sir, that you're using HTML5.
That's correct. Okay. So we can either write it this way or we can write it this way, which is the proper one. Doc type HTML. Not proper, not really proper, but the common way. So most of the time, web designers will write it this way. But either way, it's going to work just the same. And next line would be, please raise your hand. And then turn on your cameras, guys. I'm not seeing anybody now. Baroy, go ahead. Baroy, unsay sunod?
HTML, sir.
Alright, HTML. Okay. So, while you're writing the code, for example, nag-write ka sa code sa opening, para di mo malimot na, di ba, ang HTML, ang closing HTML is pinakaubos. Para dili ka malimot pag close ana sa end. So, every time that you're going to write an HTML tag, always write the closing right away. However, murang gabutan space, just like that. Makita ba? I can
Yes,
no
sir.
longer
Yes, sir.
zoom it in any longer. Muna ni pinaka-zoom in ako. Alright, again, advice lang, this is just a pro tip. Para di ka malimot og close sa imong web page, that will, especially if daghan na kay kang codes gigamit, there are already hundreds of codes. Para di ka malimot og close, always type or always enter the closing tag. However, just add spaces for the rest of the tags inside. If na kay add nga tags inside. So what is the first HTML tag inside the HTML? Say sunod. Raise your hand. Bustillo.
Head, sir.
Head. Alright, so same thing. We have head, and then i-close the gap na to dayon so that we para mahinog naman ito. Alright? And then next, what do we add? Unsa to i-add sulod sa head? I think we have Salutan, go ahead.
Title, sir.
Title. Okay. Let me open the queue para mabala na inside the mesa. Alright. So we have title. So same thing, title, and then this is what we want to display on the tab, katong tab area. So let's just call it my first web page. Alright, and then we'll close it. Alright. So for the meantime, kana lang sa mo pa may itong nabalaan yung metadata. Soon, I will let you learn more about the learn any other metadata that we can add on our website. So if these are the metadata that we need, what would be the next code?
Body.
Julina, go ahead.
Body, sir. Body, sir.
Okay, body. So we have body. Alright, and then we'll close it. Alright, so since diri pa man ta kutob, so again, body should enclose all the things that we need in our web page. So kung sa gana to i-display sa ato web page, we should always add it inside the body. So diri lang sa ta. But for me to be able to show you that it's working, because right now if we're going to run it, blanco man siya. So let's add just one more. It's called an H1, and let's say welcome to my
Okay.
Okay. So let's say welcome to my web page, and it's an H1. We'll talk about H1 later on. So H1 is just the one of the heading tag. So this is just to show you how it works. So we're going to save it, of course. Once you're done, save it or Control S and open up your folder. This one right here, and if we're going to open it up, nanatay HTML index.html here. Alright, so just double click on it. If right now, because it is set to default, every time that I will open an HTML, it will open up through Google Chrome. But in your case, if dili gani, for example, ang yung i-display is either Notepad++ or any other application, just right click on it, and then click on the open with, and then click the browser. So I would suggest to use Chrome. And then if wala dili mo display ang Chrome dia, just choose another app and then look for Google Chrome here. And then to make sure nga di na ka magbalik-balik ana, just click this. Always use this app to open HTML5. Ana lang, okay? So right now it is set to use Chrome. So just double click on it, and here it is. Ta-da. So this is the web page. This is the body, and as you can see at the top, this is where the title is displayed. I'm not sure if you can see, but you can just try to zoom it in, and then you'll see it says my first web page. By the way, for those who are using smartphones or mobile phones, make sure nga naka full screen ang screen, okay? And then ana lang kay most of the time kan makita ang screen sa inyo, makita ang yung classmate, and the codes will be very small, and I don't think you'll be able to see it clearly. So make sure nga akong screen is naka full screen para maklaro yung mga codes, since we'll be dealing with codes now. Alright, let's go back. So that is the basic structure of an HTML. So we should have the doc type declaration. We will start, and then we will begin with HTML, and of course we will end with an HTML tag. And then inside the HTML we have head. Inside the head are the metadata that includes title, and then below head you can add a body. So inside the body would be everything that we want to display on our screen. Do you have any questions so far? Nagets ra?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Alright. Nalimot ko. So, nalimot ko display ani, but I guess we already did this. So again, to save an HTML document, enter the file name, then add either of the following file extensions. We have HTML, .html, or .htm. Ganina atong gibuhat is .html, but we can also just use .htm. That will still work just fine. For websites containing multiple pages, it's always best to save the initial page as index.html, just like what we discussed. This will enable the web browser to acknowledge the page as the default page, meaning unless routed manually, it will be the first page to be rendered on the screen. So again, if you will be doing multiple web pages now already, make sure that the first page that you want to be siya pinakauna nga display should always be saved as index.html. So therefore, the browser will use it and render it as the first page. Now, I cannot go through all of the HTML tags because, like I said, there are, I think, hundreds of them. But today we're going to discuss a few. But I highly recommend to go through all of this web page HTML tags manually on your own. And then maybe you can try it. And I would suggest using this link, w3schools.com, because na po siya try na feature. So I'm pretty sure you already know W3 schools, or maybe most of you has. Excuse me. Alright. Because nindot ang W3 schools kaya pwede ka mo try ba? Na kay try yourself. So let's try to visit this before we proceed. Okay, so to learn more about HTML tags, go to W3 schools. w3schools.com and go to here, HTML. Just click on Learn HTML, and then here are the list of the tags. Here, kani sa left side, here are the list of the tags that you can use in HTML, and each of these tags you can try it yourself. For example, let's go to kani HTML basics, and here nakanindot ang this pwede mo try. Just like this one, just click on try it yourself, and pwede nimo enter ang imong code and then run it just like this. You can enter your codes here and then click run, and then it will display here. May nakanindot sa W3 schools. So if you want to learn more about HTML or any other scripting languages, I highly recommend W3 schools as a platform of learning. Alright, again, I cannot go through all of these tags today. So I would suggest after this class, or maybe during your free time, make sure to visit this website or any other tutorial so you can test each of these HTML tags right here. So you cannot go through each of one of them. But today, I'm going to introduce you some of the basic or pinaka-common na mga HTML tags. Alright, so the HTML tags na kanindot sa W3 schools is ihang group ang types of the different tags depending on its type. So for example, the basic HTML would be this. As you can see, we've already discussed doc type, HTML title and body. And then napailayan for formatting, this would be right here. And then for forms and input, so if we wanted to create forms, then we can use this as tags. If we're going to use frames, meaning it's a web page inside a web page, we can use this tags. For images, so if we want to use images in our web page, we can use these tags. If we want to use audio or video, gananta mo play o video or audio sa atong web page, we can use these tags. If we wanted to add link or hyperlinks to our website, we use these tags, and then lists, and then tables, semantics, meta info, programming, etc. Alright, again, I highly recommend to go through each of these web pages, these HTML tags for you to learn more about HTML. Alright, so these are the markup codes, just like what we did a while ago. So the visible part of HTML document is between the body and opening body and closing body only. Again, everything that we want to show on our screen should be enclosed inside the body tag. So just like this. So these are the things that we see on the screen, and it is written inside the body tag. Here, oops. Okay. So all of the HTML tags must be saved inside the body. And here it is. Bawang siya makita sa screen. Right, so let's start with HTML headings. HTML headings are defined with the H1 to H6 tags. Again, I cannot go through all of the HTML tags, but I'm just going to show you the basic ones or the most commonly used ones. And that would be headings. Now, don't get confused because naatay head dire, diba? Sa atong structure na head, but napo the headings. But these headings are inside the body tag. So the headings are usually used as titles or a main topic of a certain content. So ganahan ka nga mugama ra jud og something like a text that will represent like a title or something like that, we will use heading. So by default, headings will behave like this. So automatic siya nga mo create of bold. Kani bang bold letters? That's heading. And then automatic siyang mo add of line break. Meaning, kung sa ato pa ng keyboard, automatic siyang mo enter. Okay, line break. That's called, it's not enter, but it's called line break. Or in our keyboard, it's called enter. Nana ba? So automatic siyang mo line break. That's how an H1 or heading tag behaves. First, it's naka-bold letter siya. Just like this. And then it will automatically create a line break, meaning automatic siyang move enter. Kung sa keyboard pa, hit na siya enter automatically. So that is heading. And there are 5 or 6 different sizes. So if ganun kayo pinakadako, we will use H1. And then if second biggest, we will use H2, and then H3, until such time ang pinakagamay is H6. Alright, again, for heading, you can select up to 6 sizes. Anyway, if ganato jud kang mas dako pa jud ana, we can always use CSS to control its size. But by default in HTML, we can use 6 sizes. So we have this H1, H2, H3, H6. So remember, ang pinakadako is ang H1, ang pinakagamay is ang H6. Okay, so let's try that. Let's open up our code here. So we already added H1. So we'll just copy this. Okay, and then let's use H2. So we know that this part right here should be smaller than the sa unahan, sa ibaba. And then another one, we use H3. Obviously, every time that we're going to add an HTML tag, we should always close it. And then H4. And then H5. Asa ganito ko to? Ang sa pinakagamay?
H6, sir.
H6. Now, what do you want? What happens? Unsa imong buhaton? What do you do if ganahan pa kag mas gamay or mas dako pa dyan?
CSS, sir.
Okay, we will use CS. We will use CSS na ana. But that will be in our future lesson. For example, kulangan ra kas gidakon sa heading. Again, we can always use CSS to increase it even more or decrease the font size even more. Right, let's save it and then let's reload. Oops, let's reload here. So notice that H1 is the biggest and H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. But this is not the actual size, okay? Ako rin zoom in, but the actual size is kana. Muna siya actual size on 100%. But ako rin siyang zoom in para makita ninyo. Now, if kulang pa ni na size, if ganang kaglaing nga size aside from this, then you can always use CSS, and that will be in our next lesson soon. So that's HTML heading. And notice na automatic siyang ni add og line break, meaning automatic siya enter, and then na siya space in between, just like a paragraph. All right. Pero na siya line spacing, kumbaga. That's how a heading functions. However, the next one would be paragraph. Alright? HTML paragraphs are defined with P tag. O ganina H and then a number 1 to 6, depending on the size. For HTML paragraphs, we will use P tag. Okay? And again, if this is the opening, the closing should be like that. Na siya / in the beginning. So HTML paragraphs are mainly used to group sentences. So if we wanted to add multiple sentences, then we use P. paragraph. Now, how does it behave? First of all, it will use just the basic, ang pinaka-basic na font, which is, the default one is the Times New Roman, and I think the font size is 12 point or 11 point, I'm not really sure. But, dili siya bold like the heading. Simple ra siya. What do you mean by this? Condensed letters. Pero pag regular letters lang, dili siya bold. Wala siya gi-increase in yung font weight. So, that's the difference between a paragraph and a heading. So, let's try that out. Let's open up our code and let's add a paragraph here. Again, using P, and then we'll close it. Let's say this is a paragraph. Alright, and to test nga automatic siya mo create og line space gihapon, let's add another P, and let's say this is another paragraph, and then close P. Let's save it and let's reload. Alright, so here, I'm not sure if you can see it, so let me zoom it in. Let's try to differentiate the paragraph, which these two, and the heading. What have you noticed? What's the difference nila?
Ang iyong font, sir.
Okay, go ahead, Suleiman.
Ang welcome to my web page is habol, sir, and this is the paragraph is one.
Yeah, that's true. Alright. So the paragraph will always use the default font size, which is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is 12 point. And then for the heading, basically same default for a heading, but the difference is ang heading is naka-bold siya. Naka-bold, unlike the paragraph is just condensed, or just the regular font. Okay, now what do we do if ginanta mo gamit og laing font face or something like that? Again, we can always use CSS, or later on we'll discuss about HTML attributes. So that is paragraph. If you wanted to add sentences, group of sentences in our web page, we will use paragraph element. Next is a link. HTML links are defined with an A, with the A tag. To make HTML links, we just need to use the A element with the href attribute that specifies URL to a page. So first of all, what do we mean by an attribute? So say an attribute, an additional information about the HTML tag, or a property of an HTML tag. We'll discuss more about attribute later on, but for the meantime, we will use one particular attribute called href to create an A, or a link. Alright? So what do you mean by link, by the way? Unsay function sa link? Anybody would like to share? I want to know if kabalo ba taon sa function sa link. Anyone?
Tracer.
Lain na pod ako sa line. I appreciate it ako sa line, but let's try to listen. Kadusale, go ahead.
Kuan sir, direct location sa usa ka website, sir.
Okay, that's right. So if you want to jump from one page to another page, we will use link. That's why it's called link, diba? So just like kanang naay chain, diba? Kanang chain, kadena. Each of those parts kanang connect sa kadena are called links. All right. So same function. Since links are used to connect multiple web pages, it's the same thing with kanang kadena para makakonect ang both and the other links to make a kanang kadena chain, then na links to connect. So that's the same case with HTML. For us to be able to transfer from one page to another, it needs to be connected by a single way, and perhaps we can use a link, or in other words, it's called hyperlinks. HTML links help user jump from their current web page location to another. So again, we'll talk about attribute later on, but we will use this specific href. And then unsa gani nga tag atong gamiton for a link?
A, sir.
A. That's one. Alright, so I'm not sure nga nung A ang gigamit niya, but let's take HTML's word for it. So for us to be able to transfer from one page to another, we will use A. So A. But right now, since wala pa tayo laing nga web page, let's try to transfer it to Facebook. Facebook na lang. So we will write the ang title sa link, ang ngalan sa link, or kumbaga, yeah, let's call it name of the link, and let's see how it looks like. So if we're going to save it like this, we're going to reload. Here, this is how it's gonna look like. Kana. However, notice pero if click na ako lagi, di na siya mugana. Okay? Unsa itong buhaton? What do you think we should do? I-click na ako, di siya mugana. Alright, we will add the href. The href determines the location. Ugasa nato siya i-address. At saan nato siya i-connect. So href is one of the attributes that we will be using. So how do we write the attribute? Again, we'll discuss it later on, but this is how we're supposed to use it. So notice, diba, ang atong tag is enclosed with open and close angle brackets. Now, for us to add an attribute, again, it's called attribute or property. Before we close the HTML tag, we'll add space, and then we will add the attribute. So let's say href, all right, and then equals, and then double quotation. So again, just before we close the tag, diba, ibutang na itong attribute. So in this case, we use href, meaning that is the location, equals, and double quotation. And here, dire nato ibutang ang ato ang page. The link. Now, since this is not a local web page, so since we'll be using an online page nga kanang naa siya sa World Wide Web, we'll be entering the complete URL. Okay, so that includes http //www.facebook.com. Right? So since only in this case, if mo add ta og website na belongs sa lain outside our website, we will enter the entire URL, just like this one. So we add the http://www.facebook.com, and then let's reload. Let's save, and then let's reload. All right. So notice, and say, what do we notice when we click on when we added the href? Say, ako na notice. Baroy, go ahead.
Ay, blue, sir.
All right, go ahead, Baroy. So let's listen to Baroy first. Go ahead.
Sir, you can click the Facebook word,
Okay.
sir.
All right. And more importantly,
And it will be routed to the other page, which is the Facebook.
okay. But
Facebook page.
as per appearance, notice nga na siya underline and color blue na siya. So this means that this particular text has already been connected or already been hyperlinked. So if we're going to click on it, we are expecting it to connect to Facebook. Although it's taking a lot of time. Alright, but it's still connecting, just like Hinaya. Okay, kana, may connect siya. Alright, it's just taking its time. Maybe it's because of my internet connectivity. But that's it. However, okay, so that is if we're going to connect it to an external web page. So for us to be able to connect it to an external web page, we will add the entire URL, which includes the http://. However, if it's just gonna be from another web page na naa sa atong website, then this is how it's gonna look like. So A, and then let's close it, A, and then let's say second page, href. So if it's just gonna be another web page inside your website, then we will just remove http, and then we will write the second page directly. So let's say second page.html. Alright, so just imagine nga nakagama na ta og web page that is called second page.html, and basically this is how we're going to write the address inside the href property. So let's save that, and then here, okay, nanatay second page. So if we're going to click on it, this happened. Why do you think this happened? Ganun kani ang display? Go ahead, Kadasali.
Wala pa man kayo nagamang ko answer.
Okay, wala pa
Wala pa ka nakagamang nga page.
Okay, that's correct. All right. So if dili niya malocate ang address ng imong hyperlink, then it will display your file couldn't be accessed or something like that. Some kind of the same or similar error message. Alright, so that means we will create another web page to see if it's working. We'll create another web page. So just click on File, New, and then File Save As again. And then enter the file name. In this case, we will use secondpage.html. Save, and let's do the same thing. Doc type. Alright, let me just copy para madali ta. Let me copy everything from the first one. Let me copy it here para madali ta. And here, let's just say welcome to the second page. Alright, and then we're also going to add a link that will route us back to the original page. Isang address at ibutan.
Index.html.
Okay, index.html. Alright, let's save that and let's reload our file, our page. So, diba, this is our first page, right? So, let's reload and let's click on the second page link. Okay, so we're going to click on it. Here, we were able to route. Okay, let's change it. Alright, let's reload. So, when we click the second page na link, it routes us to the second page. And then let's see by clicking on this link, since we added index.html. So let's click here. Let's see if mabalik ba siya sa homepage. Alright, it did. Alright, so basically you'll be able to transfer from one page to another using links. And unsa nga HTML tag atong gamiton? Again?
A tag, sir.
A.
sir.
Alright. Okay, very good. Next. Alright, HTML images. Next is we're going to add images to our web page. HTML images are defined with the img tag. Remember img tag. To add an image, simply use the img element with the src attribute. Notice that there are also another attribute na po, this time src, to define the location of the image. Ganina, ang href is to define the location of the address of the URL na atong i-visit, na atong i-link. This time, we're going to look for the location of the image that we are trying to upload or add. So to do so, HTML images help a website become more attractive and informative to users. Obviously, this just enhances the looks of the website and enhances the experience and making the website more useful if we're going to add pictures. Again, we will use img tag just like this, img src, and then the location of the image, and then close it. In this example, the location where the image is located is image na folder and image.jpg, where the image, the first image na word is the folder name, then the image.jpg is the file name. Alright, so let's try. Let's open, first of all, before we add a photo, first is we're going to select the photo and save it on our website. So let's open up our file again, or our website. Itong folder na itong i-create kanina, which is this, my first web page. So first is, this is another pro tip. If we're going to add multiple, or let's say multimedia, multiple file types in our website, try to group them as much as possible. Try to group them, meaning you're going to save each file type on different folders. So for example, if we're going to add photos in our website, we're going to group all of the photos in one folder. So that means we're going to create a folder and let's call it photos. Alright, mas maayo nga itong i-group. Okay, this is a pro tip. This is to make sure that your website is as unique or uniform, as neat as possible. All of the file types should be enclosed, will be grouped rather individually. Alright, so that means we're going to create a folder, and this folder will contain all the photos that we want to use in this web page, website. So let me select photos real quick. Kana na lang kato atong previous na mga screenshots. Okay, so since this is CSC 304, the main course, so let me add the CSC 304 na klase. So we have here a screenshot. So for example, we want to add this particular photo. Example lang. So, first of all, we'll rename it para dali na to malocate. Rename it to csc304.png. Okay, let's copy this one and let's save it on our folder. Here. Let's open up photos na folder and let's paste it. Alright, so first, remember, take note of the folder name. Again, asa na to gi-save ang ato ang picture? It is inside photos na folder, and then the file name is csc304. Alright, notice that the index is right here. This is the actual page, and all we need to do to access the picture is first we need to enter photos na folder, and let's get the csc304. Why is that important? That is very important in selecting or locating the address of the photo. So, for example, okay, let's rename all of this. Let's remove all the other heading. All right, let's rename it to CSC304 and then web programming class. All right. So let's add a photo here. So again, we will use isang HTML tag.
IMG as
IMG. All right, IMG, and then we'll close it, and then IMG close. Now, for us to be able to locate the address, we will use an attribute called src. All right, src equals, and then the address should be enclosed with double quotation. So what do you think we should add here? Sa ato ibutan para malocate na to. I'm not seeing anybody again. Can you please keep your cameras turned on?
Folder name and the image name.
All right, folder name and the file name. All right, so unsa getting folder name na to?
Photos.
All right, and then slash, then file name is csc304.png. Now this is very important. Make sure that you're able to enter the right address. So if daghang folder, for example, if ang photos is inside another folder budget, make sure to list down all the folders until such time that you will see that you'll be able to locate the file name or the file itself. So right now, since CSC304 is inside photos na folder, then make sure to write photos na folder. However, if naatay lang nga folder here, let's say for example, napatay lang folder, let's say photos gihapon, and ibutang nato ang picture dito, ibutang nato ang picture ani nga new folder na pod. Then what should we do if ibutang nato? Unsa nato para ma-locate ni?
Add another like photos/photos then katong name sa image.
That's correct.
Right.
So since nato laing folder nga gi-add, make sure to locate it again. Photos, meaning this is the first folder, this is the second folder, and then the file name. All right, so let's save that. Let's reload. Here, we're able to add the photos right here. So we have CSC34, that is our heading, then the paragraph, links, and the photo. Now, right now, by default, picture is just too big. For example, if it's too big, what do we do?
CSS or
Again,
add CSS.
Actually, there are other ways to decrease the size, and that would be using attributes. Let's try if na-include na ako sa akong presentation. Tada! Alright, so the attributes provide addition. Okay, let's talk about attributes now para to get the idea what exactly are the purpose of an attribute. Can we add multiple attributes? We'll find out. Attributes provide additional information about an HTML element. HTML attributes are found inside an HTML tag. HTML attributes only appear at start tags. Alright, notice nga diri ra nato siya gibutang sa start, wala nato siya gibutang sa close. Right? HTML elements can have multiple attributes. Alright, to answer the question, yes, we can add as much as attribute as we want in one single HTML tag. And then HTML attributes are written as follows. So attribute name equals, and then the value is enclosed with double quotation, just like what we did. Example, src, and then the folder name, the file name. That's the first attribute, and we can add width to control the size of the photo. Alright, so the width is also another attribute, and then to write the value, we should write equals and then double quote and then the actual value. Make sure to include the unit. In this case, it's px or pixels. Alright, so let's try. Let's start with, okay, let's try na lang. So since this picture is just, if this is too big for us, we can always decrease it. So at src, and then we'll add another attribute here. Hold on, my computer froze. Hold on. Na-frozen ako ang. Alright. Okay, so we'll add another attribute. Just make sure nga imo siya i-add. If you wanted to add another attribute, make sure to add it after you close the first attribute. Okay? Dili na to pwede ibutang dire sa sulod, but outside the first attribute. So size is another attribute that will allow you to control the size of the photo. So that's, and then you can declare it using either width or height. Height and width only. So let's say we're going to set the height to let's say 200 px, that's 200 pixels. Alright, that's it. If we're going to set the height, by default it will also decrease, even though we only set the height, by default it will also decrease the width by default, but to keep the proper proportion. So let's save that, let's reload. Oops, nga nawala siya. Save size. No, sa'yo. I'm using CSS format, so dapat ano lang. Okay, let me clarify. Let me double check na. Mas naanad mo kung CSS ano good. Delete size instead of size width. Sorry guys, I'm using CSS. Alright, instead of size nga attribute, we will use width or height, okay, to control the size. Naanad ko sa CSS. Alright, let's reload. Asa na ron? Nawala. Akong na-close. Hold on. Tara. Kana. Alright, so we're able to decrease the size, but this is a little too small, so let's increase it. Let's give it about 600 px. That's the width. So since we use the width as the attribute, it will automatically decrease. If we decrease the width, it will automatically decrease the height, and otherwise. And if we're going to use height, it will also decrease the width automatically. So let's reload. Kinda. Alright, so if you think this is fine, then that's it. Now, again, if we're going to use only one side lang, ito i-change, then it will automatically decrease the other side. Alright? Para makip niya ang proper proportion. However, what happens if we're going to input both width and height, and you don't know the proper proportion? Let's say, for example, let's set the height to, let's give it like 1000 px. What do you think will happen? Ma-stress siya. And do you want pictures like this? Do you want your pictures to appear like this? If you'll be the one designing it. Okay. It's up to you, right? It's up to you if you want your picture to look like this. But if you want to keep the proper proportion, just set it to single side only. For example, if kinaan ka nga, alright, we can just use the width so that it will automatically adjust the height on its own, just like that. Alright, nagkas lang? That's the width, the size attribute. Alright, the next attribute that we'll talk about. Okay, Ariel, do you have any question?
Yes, sir. Kuan sir, pag mo-insert kag laing picture, sir, asa siya mabutang sa ubos sa una nga picture or sa side nga sa una nga picture?
That's a very good question. Thank you, Ariel. Let's try. Okay, to answer your question, let's try. Let's do the same thing, and since we don't have any other photo, let's just copy the same. Okay, let's copy this, and then let's paste. Let's save that. Let's reload, or let's decrease the width so we can see it properly. Let's set it to 400 each para makita na to. Let's save that. Let's reload. All right. So I guess it will display side by side until such time siguro na mapuno na siya. Then I think that's the time that it will move to the bottom. Let's try. Let's try to add more photos. Let's see what will happen if we have multiple photos. Okay, let's save that. Let's reload. All right. So it will kind of look something like this. Mura siya og automatic siyang mo paubos. Let's add more. All right. So the more photos that you have, and if you're not going to control it, basically just by adding the image tag randomly, it will appear like this, vertically or horizontally. Now, maybe your next question is, unsaon na to siyang mapaubos? Is that true? Do you think? Mo ba naisulod sa-
Yes, sir.
All right. There are different ways to do that. Obviously, the first one is using CSS. That's the proper one. But if medyo tapulan ka and gamay ra kaayo na nga code sir nga namang CSS pa man CSS komplikado na kaayo. There's one trick, and that will be using this. BR and then slash. BR / this is called line break. So you just have to add this in each of pinakalas. All right, this is not the proper one, but this is a quick hack. Let's save that and then let's reload. Kana. So you can also add that to pwede na to siyang add para mapaubos lahat na. Just like that. All right, this is not the proper way to do it, but if you want a quick fix, ano man isolusyon og naay sa inyo paagi, di ba? But again, if you want a quick fix, line break, which is written like this, BR and then close. Actually, it should be written like this. Actually, by default, properly, it should be written like that. However, for shortcut purposes, we can always use this. Okay? That's a very good question. Thank you very much, Eric. All right. Do you have any other questions? We proceed.
Yes, sir. Another, sir.
Go ahead.
Sir, pwede po na siya mo, sir, matusto nga, sir. For
Alright.
example, duwa ka picture sa taas, then duwa ka picture sa ubos nga tungod sila upat ka box, sir.
All right. Yes, that's true. But that would be the best way to do that is using CSS. All right. So we'll use CSS in the future. Next meeting we will discuss how do we control the appearance, because that is already controlling the appearance of the HTML tag. So we can move these pictures around using CSS, and that will be on our next meeting lang. Next meeting lang sa Tana area, okay? All right. And napatay lang ni question. Was it Palomar? Raise a hand.
Okay na sir. Tapag na sir.
Natapag na. All right. Good. Okay. The next attribute is lang. What do you mean by lang? The document language can be declared in the HTML tag. The language is declared in the lang attribute. So lang is shortcut for language. Now this is kung saan man siya gamit nganong kinalang tag language. This is for SOC, search engine SEO, search engine optimization. So there, the reason why some websites or most websites will declare language, will add the attribute language to make sure that the browser already know that the language that will be used is, for example, English, and that enhances the SEO, the search engine optimization. So going back in our previous discussion, we talked about SEOs, basically enhancing your ranking on search engines para every time na i-google ka makita ang kadaya. So lang attribute will help that, because for example there are some websites, for example na yung mga Google's search engines that will only display, you can set which language to display every time that you're going to Google something. Kanan ka nga puro ra English, then it will display all the websites that are declared as English language. So that's basically the only use of an attribute lang, to let the browser know, or to let the browser, the search engines, and the web server know that the language that you'll be using on the website is gonna be, let's say, English or Filipino, Cebuano, etc. Alright, and to do that, we will use attribute lang. For English, US nga English, the value should be en-us. All right. So and it should be written inside the HTML tag. So here, all right, let me just erase the other photos para medyo barog tanaw na to on the website. Let me erase the BR as well. Alright, so it's okay. Alright, and again, for us to be able to declare the language that we'll be using on the website, we will add it here in head, and we will use lang equals en-us. en-us. What do you mean by en-us, Ganit?
American English.
That's correct. Alright, in American English. That means this website will be using American English, and the benefit of adding this is that the browser will know that you'll be using American English language. The server will know as well, and search engines will also know that this website consists of EN-US language. This increases your SEO, search engine optimization. So right now it wouldn't really show anything as benefit. Again, the benefit is on your search engine ranking. Alright, next is declaring a language is important for accessibility application like screen readers and search engines. Next is Href. Alright, we already discussed it a while ago. Href is used for links. HTML links are defined with a tag. The link address is specified in that Href attribute, just like what we did a while ago. And then we have the title. So we already discussed that. The title attribute provides a tooltip for HTML elements. The tooltip is declared in the title attribute. So don't get confused with the HTML title na tag. Alright, because HTML tag is different from HTML attribute. So attribute is additional information. The HTML tag is the function text declaring a function. Okay, so this is not the same as HTML tag, but the purpose of title is it will display a tooltip. What do you mean by tooltip? Any idea? Unsa lang siguro ang tooltip? Okay, just like this. If you hover on a specific element, it will display this kanang text. All right. Right now, let's without adding any title to our web page, let's try to hover. Let's say kani. Okay, hover na to na nothing, right? Notice. Pag i-hover na to ang Facebook or second page, nothing will display. Dibantayan ninyo? Nothing. However, if we're going to add title ang attribute, we should be able to see a tooltip. And tooltip is like this. A tooltip is a text box that displays information about an element when you hover it. So let's try. Let's try to add it on our kaning Facebook, second page. All right. For our second page na link, we'll add a title. And let's say link to the second page. So again, this is just a tooltip, and if we're going to save that and let's reload. Okay, right now without reloading, if we hover it, nothing happens, but if we're going to reload it, the next time that we hover on the link, it will display this. Makita ba? I'm not sure if makita,
Yes,
pero
sir.
gamay siya kaayo. But the next time that you hover it, it will display a tooltip or a text box containing, depende lang nimo unsa imong ibutang diya. You can either add a description or more information about the link before, so that the user know before they click it, basically just to inform them what is that for. Alright, is attribute title. Then we have the size. Now, don't get confused. Again, we're not supposed to add size, but we're going to add either height or width. Okay, so that's the not the size itself is the attribute. The attribute is either width or height. And just like what I showed you a while ago, if we're going to write just width alone or height alone, it will automatically adjust the other part. For example, if we're going to adjust only the width, then it will automatically adjust the height to keep the proper proportion. And if we're going to set the height, then it will also automatically adjust the width to keep the proper proportion. What happens if you're going to declare both? Now, there are tendency that the picture will get distorted because you force the image to be adjust both the width and height. Now, if dili mo ma-adjust in the proper with the proper proportion, then tendency is the picture mahimo siyang distorted. Must stretch siya, just like what we did a while ago. Okay? And by the way, to add any about the lang, because we only displayed en-us, later on I'll give you more details about attribute later on. Let's proceed. We have style. Alright. The style attribute is used to include an inline CSS property. So we'll since next meeting we'll discuss CSS, then basically we can use an attribute called style for us to add CSS properties inside an HTML tag. The CSS is used to add additional formatting to elements. This is defined as style attribute. So this is the markup code, just like this, and then the output. Okay, so this is what a CSS code looks like. As you've noticed na siya width colon height colon value. Mo nang na-save kanina. Alright, so let's try. We will add two photos. Dua ka photo. Let's copy and paste it. And let's control the size of the first one using a width or the size attribute, and the second one we will use style. Alright, the first one we set it to 400 px. Okay, using an attribute using width attribute. Now for style, basically this will be using CSS codes here. Now you don't necessarily have to take note of this because we will discuss it in our future lesson, but this is just to give you an idea. Basically we can use either the width attribute or the CSS attribute. Alright, so how are we going to set the width of the picture using CSS? So first is we'll write the attribute style and then equals and then double quotation and then the CSS property. Let's set the width. Para mabalaan na itong differences, let's set the width of the second photo with 500 px. Alright, so how did we write it? So first is we write the property and the value. So we set the property CSS property, which is width, and then colon, and then the value, which is 500 px, and semicolon. Semicolon, just like C++ or Java, that is used to end the property or the function in C++. Alright, and then close, and then image, close image, and BR. So this is a CSS. Again, don't worry about this, we'll discuss it in our future. But let's try to differentiate between using the size or width attribute and the style attribute. Let's save that and then let's reload. Okay, alright, so both works, both of the pictures work. However, the differences are obviously the size. So we use HTML attribute, which is width, and here we use CSS attribute, which is called the style. Alright, so I make game mo rin ako mas dako ang usa para makita natin difference. So again, that is how to use CSS in controlling the size of controlling the look, the format of an HTML tag. But alright, that is still not the proper way of using CSS to control the format. Okay, there are more proper way. There are mas proper pa dyan nga way when using CSS, and that will be discussed in our future. But in some other cases, we really need to use an inline CSS. This is called inline CSS, by the way. Let me know if I'm just talking too fast. Alright, meaning inline CSS because it's just the CSS property is written inline of the HTML tag. And nailaing nga mas proper pang paagi how to use CSS, and that will be discussed in the future. Alright, do you have any questions? Okay, I'll take the silence as no. So next, we have the HTML attributes ID and class. HTML or CSS in JavaScript requires reference to be used for HTML elements. The ID and class attributes give references to elements inside an HTML document. So this would be the ID and the class is just a reference. So we will not be using this inside HTML, I mean, we will not use it for HTML purposes, but we will add only ID and class for CSS or JavaScript purposes only. Okay? Mura ba, og tagaan nato siya og iyang identity. For example, kaning H1, ganahan ko nga i-control ni siya, ganahan kong designan siya sa CSS. Nga dili inline, alright? Which is the proper way, which is an external CSS. I'm going to ganahan ko nga i-control ni, i-design ni siya using an external CSS. Now, ganahan ko, the first thing that I'm going to do is, I'm going to i-tag na ko ang element nga akong i-control using an external CSS. And just like students, we're going to give it an identity. So we can either use an ID, let's call it header, where siya variable ba? Or we can also use a class. And let's call it header still. Alright, so both of the ID and class will be used para makita siya, we'll be using ID and class for us to target this particular element. Alright, so this will be discussed in our future lesson, but if we're going to use CSS to change how the H1 looks, then ato ni siyang butangan og identity. And we will target this ID para ma-specify nato nga kani ang atong ganahan nga i-edit. Alright, this may not make sense now, but in our next meeting, once we discuss CSS, you'll notice that this is really important so that we'll be able to pinpoint exactly which HTML we are trying to edit or format. Okay? Alright, so that will be all the attributes that I'm going to discuss today. And obviously, that is not all the attributes. If there are hundreds of HTML tags, there are even more than attributes, because sa usa ka element or HTML tag, it can use multiple attribute man. Okay, so these are some examples of attributes. We have alt, disabled, href, id, src, style, title. We already discussed some of it a while ago. So for example, for image attribute, again, there are more than attributes. Daghan kayong attribute. Mas daghan ang attribute is because even usara ka HTML tag, daghan kay iyang pwedeng magamit nga attribute, just like this. For image element, we can use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 attributes. So if there are hundreds of elements, just imagine you may need to multiply it to 12 to get the actual number of attributes as well. So therefore, I will not be discussing all of them, but I highly recommend you to do it yourself. Again, just go to www.w3schools.com, go to tabs for you to be able to see all the attributes. So let's go to that website for you to get an idea. So w3schools.com. Alright, and go to reference, or here, nana siya diri, HTML. Go to HTML reference here. Alright, so these are all the HTML tags. So I highly recommend to try and test each of them. So mura ni siya. You can set it to kuan. Para mas sayo ninyo, select here kaning HTML by category on the left side. So, click on HTML by category para mag-guess ninyo para asa na siya ng particular element. So we have here basic HTML, we have formatting, then we have forms and input. Okay, so for example, for forms, let's just click on it to learn about the attribute of each form or each element. Just click on it and you'll see the attributes that you can use here. Okay, for form itself, these are the attributes that you can use. Okay. Alright, so to know which attributes can be used on that particular element, just click on it. So for example, for form, this is an example. You can try it yourself. This is the form element. So again, I highly recommend to do it yourself. And for your assignment, I'll let you create a simple, a basic web page. Right now, let me see if I can find it. By the way, do you have any questions while I'm looking for your assignment? Do you have any questions so far? Nag-gets na ba tanan? Anyone? Okay, again, I cannot discuss what about sa mga Android user lang, sir. Alright. Diba I asked you to download Href Edit? Thank you for asking that. This is really important. Yeah, thank you. Again, for Android users or iOS users, I told you to download Href Edit, right? Naka-download na ba ang Href Edit?
Download, sir.
Okay. If that's the case, I think this is the best time to. Okay, let me show you how it works. Actually, I have na ako'y video ana sa YouTube. I think later I'm going to send it to you, but just to give you an idea, we still have 10 more minutes. So let me connect on real quick. Hold on. Allow me to show it to you. Okay, by the way, this is your assignment. This is how it's going to look like. You're going to create your personal profile. Hold on. Nabukat mo yung computer. Close it real quick. This big voice, dahon. Nakakunik pa nga ni ko gahapon. Hold on, okay? Maybe because I'm not connected to Wi-Fi. Hold on.